Okay, I think we're live, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are up and about. We have clicked the dials, pressed the buttons, turned the knobs. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the stream. Woo! FanFX. Is that how you say your name? FanFX? Nice to see you. Hello. Less than 3 Entertainment. You are live? Well, yes, I am. Hi, hi, hi. It's a day, gang. It's a day, and we are doing some less stressful things today, right? It's pretty much going to be a chill day, maybe. I wanted to talk about some stories of the day that have been happening that I've missed while I was busy on Tim Pool and things like that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about just some things I've been feeling and thoughts that have been going through my mind, and I just needed to kind of vent for a little bit, so we'll get some ranting done a little bit. But yeah, today's going to be a relatively relaxed and calm day unless something triggers me, right? And we'll have call-ins as well, so people who have thoughts and want to talk to me, you can jump in the Discord and jump backstage, and we can pull you in. Ballistic Pickle says, good job on Tim Pool, brother. Well, thank you, thank you. Wasn't a perfect showing, but I think it was okay. And if you guys have thoughts on that and you want to call in and give me your thoughts on that, always welcome. I'm open to criticisms. I'm open to accolades. I'm open to anything. So come on in and call in, and we'll get that going. But before we do that, I have 2 things I want to talk about. Well, do I want to wait for people to kind of shuffle in before I start talking about these? Probably wait a moment. I'll wait a moment and give people a moment to realize I'm live. It always takes a minute. You guys are always slow before you start kind of shuffling on in here. Once a little bit more people get in here, we'll talk about it, right? And I don't know how many people will show up today because, again, no panel today. It's just going to be me. So that's always hit or miss on how many people show up. We got a great panel coming tomorrow. It's going to be about the Garcia deportations. I do want to talk about that today, but tomorrow I'm going to be moderating a discussion with Pisco, New York Shade, Aircraft Sparky, and Prime Kai. So that should be fun. Tune in for that. That's tomorrow. Zero Fuck says, yeah, you both did good on Tim. Well, thank you. Living the Dream says, you did well debating 2 people on Timcast. Thank you. Appreciate the accolades. Again, not a perfect showing. I didn't get the knockout. It's true. But thank you. I do appreciate it. We got some people backstage already. Let's bring this lovely person in. I don't know them. And we'll see what they have to say, and then we'll kind of get into the things I wanted to talk about. This should give us time to have a little bit more people kind of start to show up. Right, here we go. Hello. Hello, you're live. Can you hear me? You're muted on your end, friend. Wonderful, gang. First caller of the day. Hi. Hello. Knock, knock. Okay, buddy. I'm going to give you a few seconds. And we're going to have to let you go if this is what we're doing. I appreciate you calling in. But, you got to unmute yourself and start talking. Or else I can't hear you and we can't have a conversation. Oh, is that you, FanFX? Give you 1 second. Okay, we'll give him 1 second. We'll give him a second, gang. No need to rush. They left on their own. Wonderful. Beautiful, gang. It's gonna be one of those kind of days. Oh, here we go. Let's try again. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
We have an audible connection. Welcome to the show. What's up, my friend?
I'm all right. I really want to talk about, I don't know, what is on your mind the most? I talk about anything.
What is on my mind the most? Well, here, let me ask you this. The deportations that Trump is engaged in. What are your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think anyone that says that it's not amoral and illegal kind of cooked. But I think he's playing a lot of brinksmanship with the law and with the Constitution. Um, but I think like it's really important that when people talk about it, that they are very accurate with the facts, because
What do
as
you
things
mean?
start to escalate, well, like for example, saying that the Supreme Court was 9-0 on the Garcia case, I don't think that's a like quite an accurate way to describe it, especially because like the only reason um, the liberal justices agreed with that decision was because they didn't want to further delay the proceedings to try to get him back.
So as I understand it, if we're referring to the same case, the 9-0 part of the decision was that the administration had to facilitate the return of Garcia. There was I think a 5-4 portion of the decision, which was about jurisdiction. And again, I could be wrong on this. Don't quote me.
Okay.
Okay. But that's what I thought the 9-0 decision was about. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, you guys can tell me in the chat. And chat always loves to tell me that I'm wrong.
So
No,
are you saying the
Blizzard, they didn't say
jurisdiction thing is
effectuate.
about?
Just real quick, Blizzard, they didn't say effectuate. They said facilitate, which is a different thing. But go ahead.
Were you saying the 5-4 was about like the April 7th deadline?
No, I'm saying that the originally when Judge Zinnick, I don't know how to say this guy's name. It starts with an X, okay? When that judge said that they had until a deadline and they had to effectuate the release, right?
Yeah.
Part of the decision was overturning that ruling because they felt that the judge overstepped a little bit in how they worded it. And so that was the 5-4 portion of the decision. And then they tossed it
Okay.
back and told that the Trump administration that no, they have to facilitate it. And that's where we are right now, I believe. And we're going to talk about it later,
Right.
but I believe Cynics has since also said, hey, we're going to give you another deadline for this, but you still have to do it. And it might still go up to the Supreme Court. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's where we are right now.
Okay. Do you know? So I mean, not do you know, but the the conservative justices, like no one, because it was an emergency case, as I understand, no one had to like write a justification for their decision.
There, no, I don't think there was a dissenting opinion, if that's what you mean.
Well, there wasn't even. Was there like a ruling, like
They
detailing
they did they
why?
did they did explain a little bit, but I don't have it up with me. And but there is a short. It's not the same as a full Supreme Court ruling where they come out and they have and they kind of lay out like this is how we arrived at the ruling. This is how we arrived at the verdict that we did because of X, Y, and Z. It was a much more abbreviated version of that, but I don't have it up, so I encourage
So
everyone to
are
go
you talking
look
about
at
the
it.
4-page document?
Yeah, it's very short.
Because that was just like an informal dissent from the liberal justices.
Yeah. Whereas
So like there
a
was
normal
no.
Supreme Court ruling is quite a bit longer.
Yeah, so there was nothing. There was zero justification from the for like the 9-0 decision, essentially, that like or about like why that ruling happened, and what law they were pointing to. I don't think that exists, or maybe I'm wrong.
Hmm. Again, I'd have to look at the decision. I can't say either way right now. But all I know is that, in my opinion, as a layman, I think that they are violating at least the spirit of the order. I think that Trump and Bukele's. Did you see their meeting that they had in the White House the other day?
Are
Bukele
you talking to me?
and Trump. Yes, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I think that the way that they talked about it and the way that Bukele said, basically to the effect of, oh, why would we smuggle in a terrorist back into America? We're just not going to do that. I think that they're violating the spirit of the order, and I think that that's pretty clear. I think that we continue to see the administration's approval and how they're handling the immigration situation drop. And remember, this is Trump's big thing, right? Like, this is what a lot of people trusted Trump to do, is to handle immigration. And the fact that his approval rating on this issue is plummeting is, I think, telling. And it's a ray of hope in an otherwise dark landscape. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree that he's violating the spirit of it. Absolutely. I think the thing that I'd point to as like, well, here's how you don't want to stretch the truth, is to say like he's defying a Supreme Court order, right?
I mean, look, I understand what you're saying. And if you feel like now's not the time to go full throated with. But I'll say this: like, usually I'm the one. It's funny because usually I'm the guy telling, "Hey, don't be so hyperbolic. Let's kind of cool our jets a little bit. Let's keep our powder dry. Let's not go full crazy here." But I do really feel, and I have other callers in, so we'll wrap this up soon.
Sure.
But no, you're fine. You're fine. Thank you for calling in. I do appreciate you, sir, or ma'am. I don't fucking know. But like, we are in a situation where I do think it is not only justified but important to point out exactly what is happening here. If all the
Yeah, I'm
administration was
actually
doing,
completely in agreement.
sure, if all the administration was doing was giving them a plane ticket and sending them on a civilian plane, dropping them off at the airport in another country, and then waving them on their way, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. I think it would be just, okay, they're being deported. And we could have maybe little conversations on the edges about whether we should deport them or not, but it wouldn't be as big of an issue. What makes it scary, what makes it really, really bad, in my opinion, bad enough that I think that we should be screaming at the rooftops about how fucked up this is these people are being put on a plane and sent to a supermax prison in a foreign country where we literally cannot get them back. And
Yeah.
I don't think that being an illegal immigrant is enough to justify sending someone to a supermax prison for possibly life. And that's insane to me that people would think that's okay to do. That's what makes this crazy, in my opinion.
I think we should be able to also at the same time save more extreme rhetoric, such as he's defying Supreme Court orders.
I
think that's the main thing.
That's
that
fair.
Like, just like being as detailed and close to the truth as possible when so much of our problems right now are people straying from the truth.
There is a temptation. A lot of people feel like the other side's doing it, so I should do it too. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, right? When I get to my kind of solo dolo stuff here. But there is this idea that the other side started it, so we can do it, and we have to do it, because if we don't do it, then the other side will win. And I think it's important to resist that temptation as much as possible. That said, I think the flip side of that, though, is we can't be scared to do what is necessary to combat this and tell the truth, even if the truth is very bold and very it feels hyperbolic, but it really isn't. And to say that the danger we face to our civil liberties is at one of the most extreme periods of time that in my lifetime, I don't think is hyperbole. I think it's just true. But yeah.
I guess it's technically true, but I don't know if we want to go with technically true. But I get what you're saying, and I don't want to hold you up. I know you have other people wanting to talk.
You're fine.
I appreciate you.
No, thanks for calling in, and thanks for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed the rest of the show. Have a great day, man. Bye.
See ya.
To the void with him. Okay, let's see who this next caller is. Hi, you're live.
Hey, Whick.
What's up?
Recognize me? I'm Jack. I spoke with you in regards to Zuckerberg. Is Zuck a cuck a few months ago?
Vaguely remember it. What's up?
Okay, yeah. I was curious to see what your thoughts were on the latest Joe Rogan, or the Joe Rogan Experience episode
With
that
Dave
had
Smith
Dave
and
Smith
Douglas Murray?
yeah. I was curious what your thoughts on it were because,
Mhm.
firstly, I try to keep myself out of the Israel Palestine conflict because I'm neither Palestinian or Jewish, so neither side would really accept me if they had the opportunity. At least that's my belief. But I would say I lean towards Israel in terms of the wider context of it. But even I looked at Douglas Murray's debate performance. I wasn't really impressed, and it's kind of like a little head scratching for me to see some people on the pro-Israel side, like look at that and say, "Oh, he demolished Dave Smith," when I really didn't agree with like the points he was making, such as I perceive them to be appeals to authority arguments, and that one line that was, uh, "You need to have actually visited Gaza to have an informed opinion." That to me just comes across as lived experience, which is to me not a valid form of evidence, or at least not a very strong form of evidence. And I was curious to see what your thoughts on it were, as someone who hosts a lot of debates and a lot of people who technically may not be experts in the fields they're talking about, but regardless can have very informed opinions and bring facts to the table.
So, I got a lot of thoughts on this for a lot of reasons. Um, I'll just I'll just give you kind of my 30,000 foot take, and then we'll kind of drill down to the specifics, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah,
my
sure.
30,000 foot take here is, I think that Douglas Murray was simply trying to convince his friend Joe Rogan why he is doing people a disservice on his specific podcast. He wasn't trying to demolish anyone or Dave Smith or anything like that, but simply point out how Dave Smith acts, and the way in which he acts is disingenuous, and how Dave Smith, the comic, is the one that is doing the appeal to authority thing. Now, whether he did that effectively or not, we can talk about that, right? But I think that if we look at it through that context, I think Douglas Murray actually did quite a good job. One of the problems I have with people like Dave Smith is they dismiss the experts that they disagree with, but then they don't, and they present themselves not as experts, but as someone who can contend with experts. But when they are held to the standard of an expert, they retreat to the, oh, I'm just a or I'm not a journalist, or
I'm just a
I'm
comedian.
just a comedian, or I'm just this, or I'm just that. And I would disagree with Murray when he says that you have to go to a country in order to talk about that country. But I do agree with Murray in what I feel he was getting at, which is, if you're going to talk about a subject, you probably should do the work to really dig into the subject. And if you have the resources to, like Dave Smith does, because remember, this isn't me just having a panel where we're going to, or a single debate where I talk about a singular subject. Dave Smith has been talking about Israel and Palestine for years, like years at this point. The man is not a poor man like me. He has the funds that if he wished, he could go, and as I think the example Douglas Murray used was, look at the checkpoints that he talks about that he claims are oppressive, and he could actually visit one and see what it's like. To do that is probably a good thing, just in general, if you can. I don't think that it makes it so no one can or should listen to you if you haven't, but it is telling that they put in no effort to expanding their knowledge on the subject. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But again, and I'm sure if it were to be an actual debate, like Douglas Murray would probably convince me that he wanted to debate. But like you said, it wasn't actually a debate. It was more so him trying to appeal to Joe Rogan to like not platform or not give attention to certain actors who, if when pressed, will say, "Oh, I'm not someone to be taken seriously anyway. So why are you even taking me seriously?" It's like the Jon Stewart defense, like, "Oh, I'm just a comedian." That's a classic example of one. But but for this particular showing, I couldn't find Douglas Murray's arguments pretty convincing
That's fair.
because on the one hand, he's asking to appeal to the experts, but Douglas himself is not an expert in the field he's talking about. For instance, like from what I know of, he only has an English degree, but he jumps from field to field outside of his area expertise several times in his books. And like when you talk about like the expert consensus on the Israel-Palestine conflict, well, it's worth asking like which experts, because the expert consensus on Israel is the exact opposite to what Murray believes. Like you have the UN Human Rights Office, like Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch, the ICC. Like all of these organizations are filled with international law and human rights law experts that directly oppose what Douglas Murray says. And not to mention, you even have Israel's own Holocaust and genocide scholars like Omar Bartov and Amos Goldberg, and of course, like Norm Finkelstein. So, with all of this in mind, to me, it's just baffling how Douglas Murray can come on to the biggest podcast in the world and pretend that's a waste of his time to debate his beliefs with someone who doesn't have credentials he himself doesn't even have.
I understand. I think at the end of the day, again, I don't agree with Douglas Murray saying that you have to be an expert on a subject to talk about it, but I do think that if I had to place my bets on who was more knowledgeable as a subject, and a scholar who had studied it for years or a comedian podcaster, I'd go with the expert. That said, the Israel-Palestine conflict is unique in a way, in that it has been propagandized so hard from both sides that these quote-unquote experts are often simply advocates, and it becomes hard to find a real scholarly, unbiased kind of work. And it's so fraught because there's a lot of good scholarship that is also laced with advocacy in there that is a much bigger problem. But as Douglas Murray says, specifically about Dave Smith has not done the work to be trusted on this. He's a clown.
Of course, yeah.
I will agree with that. That said, I wouldn't listen to Douglas Murray either, right? Like I wouldn't, like I wonder what Douglas Murray has to say about this conflict. I don't care, right? But that's just me.
Yeah, again, like I completely agree with that. And my own personal stance on like trust the experts is like, well, what specifically are the experts saying? Like, what is their methodology? Like is what they're saying makes sense? And if you're going to hear from someone who isn't credentialed, like who are they using as their source? Like, what is their methodology, etc. And so to me, I guess it would be just which one is the most objective, which can be like either or. That's
in many cases, no one's look. Here's the hell of it. In a lot of these conflicts, no one's completely objective. It's just almost impossible to be. But what we can do is look at what they're saying and try to match it up with what we see on the ground, really. So that's that's a pro in the column for Douglas Murray, is telling people to go see for themselves. I don't know if that's an appeal to authority. I think it's the opposite. I think it's like, hey, don't trust the experts. Go look at it for yourself. And I do think that there is some value to that.
Yeah, especially in times of war, because there's always a fog of war situation. You never know what's going on as it's occurring.
True. So that's my thoughts on the podcast. I do think that Joe Rogan, look, as someone who's a huge free speech advocate, if Douglas Murray was saying that Joe Rogan should never have non-experts on, I would be clowning on Douglas Murray. But that's not what Douglas Murray was saying. He's saying it's weird that they only have non-experts on, which is weird. It's weird.
I would say so.
They just have conspiracy theorists. They don't have actual experts on. At least the ratio between the two, at least according to Douglas Murray, and I don't watch Joe Rogan, so maybe he's wrong here. But according to Douglas Murray, the ratio is very skewed in the conspiratorial direction, as opposed to credentialed experts. Again, I think that there's room for both. I think that the normie opinion actually matters because normie opinions help shape our policy and our law. Whether that's good or bad, it's what it is. And I do find that normie opinions can catch things that the experts sometimes miss. That said, it would be weird to just never have an expert on, especially if you're Joe Rogan, who can get literally anyone he wants on. So
right. Yeah, I think like more productive podcast episodes would be two experts with differing opinions. I know he's had them on, like he's had a couple episodes like that where that was the case, and they turned out to be like a mess. But I still think it would be entertaining regardless.
Yes, again, the appeal to authority fallacy is only a fallacy if the authority has nothing to do with the subject at hand. So let me give you an example. If I said you should trust that, this guy says that the Ferrari is better than this other car, well, you should trust him because he's a doctor. What? Who cares,
it's nonsensical.
Right? It doesn't matter. But if I said something like, hey, this general who's been the commander of the NATO forces, it may know a little bit more about warfare, logistics, and the state on the ground than someone who runs a culture war podcast. That's not really a fallacy to appeal to one authority over the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But going off of that, would you say that the phenomenon known as like death of expertise is more so of a death of humility? Like you have a bunch of experts weighing in on topics that they aren't really credentialed to speak on, and that's why people are having are more likely in our era.
The expert class has absolutely shot themselves in the foot with this. Like there is a big reason why a lot of people don't trust experts on their anymore, and it's largely their fault in a lot of cases because they decided to weigh in on things that were not their subject of expertise, and yet try to carry their credentials as an expert into that new field. And two, a lot of them were advocates instead of just experts, and this caused them to fib. Let's put it kindly, okay?
Yeah.
And when you lie to people, people don't trust you anymore, and of course not. But I do think that like it's as I'll give you an example. The Iraq War is a good example, right? Because a lot of people looked at the intelligence, and the intelligence got it wrong. They said there were weapons of massive destruction in Iraq. There weren't any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, right? At least not the ones that we were sold on. At least not nukes, right? And a lot of people saw that and said to themselves, those experts lied. I'll never trust the American intelligence experts again. That's a silly way to go about life because while, yes, they were wrong in this instance, 9 times out of 10, the U.S. intelligence gets it correct.
Right.
So don't let one mistake color and make you never trust. Always trusting the government is just as stupid as never trusting the government.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
If there's no like meaningful alternative, then Occam's razor.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanna discuss?
No. Thanks for the convo, Whick. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks. See you later, buddy. To the void. To the void. Yeah, but simply saying, hey, this person is an expert and this person's not, doesn't necessarily mean it's a fallacy. But that is what it is, right? Today, gang, since there are more of you here, I do want to talk about 2 things. So first of all, this is a call-in show. We're going to take call-ins. We're going to talk to people. We're going to have some fun. I also I want to go over some news of the day, right? But there are 2 things I want to talk about right now that more of you are here. I have one apology to make and one kind of point of interest. And then I kind of want to talk about my thoughts in general. Cool? Well, here. Okay, so first of all, I made an assumption yesterday when I invited someone on my show, Drone Tech, okay? I assumed he would have a position. He did not. And he informed me today that my assumption was just very, very wrong. And I feel really bad for making this assumption. I thought, because he was a right-winger and a Trump voter, I thought he would be in support of a lot of these deportations that were happening. And that was totally wrong on my part. We had to talk about it today. And apparently, he's like, no, this is a huge violation of people's civil liberties and due rights and due process and all these things. So, man, my bad on that. It sucks. And I feel bad. I feel really bad for assuming that. I do. Because I feel like I'm getting caught in the trap of, this person voted for this person. I must know all their beliefs. And that was a mistake on my part, and I wanted to apologize. And I know it's not a huge deal, but it is a big deal to me because I try not to do that things. I try to take people as individuals rather than as caricatures and groups. So shout out to you, Drone Tech. Sorry about that. We'll get you on again another day. Yeah, I should feel bad. I do feel bad on that. The second thing I wanted to say, kind of like a point of interest thing, is that a lot of people of you are asking me about Tim Pool. We covered Tim Pool, and we covered we reviewed my performance, which was mixed. And for those of you asking, I had great points and I had bad points. Okay, we reviewed that on Monday. But while I was talking on Monday, it has been brought to my attention that I might have implied that Lactoid said that there was Ukrainians were genociding the Russians. He never said that. If I implied that, I apologize. I did not mean to imply that. If you want to know what Lactoid thinks, go ask Lactoid. He's always available. You can catch him in my Discord and you can DM him. Okay, that was a point of interest. My optics were horrible, Nitsua? Maybe. Are you talking about the Tim Pool thing? What do you mean my optics were horrible? Are you talking about my pronunciations? Yeah. Yeah. I agree. But I don't know what else you mean. Phineas says, probably a good guess, but pragmatically it makes sense to invite people to explain their own views rather than hazarding a guess yourself. Yeah, and but the problem is a lot of times when I'm making cold invites to people, I have to kind of assume a little bit. What I try to do when I recruit people is I kind of give them the prompt or at least something close to the prompt that I'm thinking of, and then I see how they respond to it. And if they respond to it in a way that I think fits with the show and fits with what I need for the show, I'll invite them on. I didn't do that in this case because I was distracted, and so I just assumed. And I asked, "Hey, you want to talk about the deportations?" And he said yes. And I assumed he was going to be on the side of the deportations. I was wrong. Nitsua says, no, how you carried your presentations, your interruptions, you couldn't really control your emotions, just being honest. Well, Nitsua, you are free to have that opinion. I did interrupt a lot. That's true. Control my emotions. Look, I don't know. I think I controlled my emotions fairly well. I don't know about the presentation part. I don't know. I don't know what you mean about that. So, fair enough. Public Doma Tonight says, I watched it. I think you did a great job, Whick, especially since it was on Tim Pool's show. Yeah. Like I said, it's a mixed bag. If you think I don't have criticisms of my performance, you are wrong. I think especially at the beginning, I was slow and I did not frame my argument as well as I could have. The interruptions thing is fair too. I think especially at the beginning, I interrupted more than I should have. True. But there did come a point where, especially with Tim, I had to interrupt Tim. Tim wouldn't let me get in a word in edgewise and finish my thoughts. So I had to interrupt that guy. I won't apologize for being mean to Tim. Okay. But I was quite. I felt I was quite calm. Poof 555. Thank you for the gift sub. The gift sub to Boppin' Wop. Rabbit Wombat says, if you could visit one of the 4 major regions of the Ukrainian conflict, which one would you choose? Feel free to pronounce it properly. Funny. You should have worn a beanie to mirror the host. I should have worn a tracksuit. I was thinking of wearing a tracksuit just to be kind of a little Zelensky-ish. And I did. I was like, do I want to wear my hoodie because it's iconic? Do I want to wear like a tracksuit, like and sweats to be more like Zelensky, or do I want to wear like a nice button-up shirt and look a little professional? I went with the button-up shirt. I think it was a good choice. Cervantes says B+, but I have criticisms. Levi says solid B- on pool. It was 2v1, and they deflected on all your good points. Another new account says, quote, Tim wouldn't let me give Warden edgewise, unquote, bruh. Gelatinous Rube says, the collar looks great. We got to hang next time I'm in Philly. Yeah, let me know, and we'll see what we can do. Torrente says, Whick, and doesn't spell my name right, was the stereotypical whining liberal. True, King, true. J-Max says, when your argument rests on appeals to humanitarianism, moral imperative, and war profiteering, well, you don't have much of an argument. Well, you may think that. Fair enough. Bonging Stuff says, I'll give you a C. Room for improvement. Fair enough. Phineas says, when did conservatives stop believing in objective morality? Jeff Lewis says, I thought making the fiscal case for military production was good. And that's the thing. Like, no one's ever going to be satisfied with the tack I take because there's so many different tacks that you can take in this. Big Bad Booty Daddy says, a nice button-up shirt, ? You mean an ill-fitting shirt that looked like it resided at the bottom of your closet for years? It was literally a brand new shirt. It resided at the bottom of my closet for years. I literally got it the day, well, not the day before, but the 2 days before. I got it. I went to JCPenney's and I picked it up. Dylan Browser says, I give you 6 Wicks out of 9. I didn't watch it. No, fair. True. Big Bad Booty Daddy says, try it on next time, maybe. Big Bad Booty Daddy, like, oh, I remember you. I didn't know who you were at first. Now I know who you are. Okay, I remember you. Look, let me tell you something about being a creator, boys and girls. People are always going to hate you, no matter what you do. There's going to be your haters. And here's the deal. You ain't made it till you got haters. Until you got people coming in your replies, criticizing everything you do, you're just nothing. You haven't made it. You haven't become anything. You're not doing anything of note. But yeah, Big Bad Booty Daddy is one of my haters. They lost the ability to hate on my teeth. So now they're hating on whatever they can find. Apparently they don't like my shirt. Oh, I got a new hoodie, gang. Before we get into kind of the news of the day, someone got me a hoodie. One of our more based community members sent me a hoodie. It's nice. It's got I don't know if you guys can see. It's got a dragon. It's got a dragon. I love dragons. Dragons are big pimpin'. Okay. Big pimpin'. I hate that you shaved the beard. The beard thing was an accident. Okay. So I was cutting my beard, okay, to shape it a little bit before the show because I didn't want to look like a homeless guy, okay? I wanted to look prim and proper. So I was shaping it a little bit, and my dog jumped on my leg, right? To like cuz she wanted to go outside, so Lola like was pushing at my leg, and I cut a huge chunk out of my beard. And the airport, like I was going to the airport that day, like a couple hours. I was going to get in the car. And so I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? So I just shaved it off. So I just saved it off. And that's what happened. Phineas says the only solace Whick can take in his performance is that all of his points were 100% correct, and his opponents were both morally and intellectually inferior. Look, you don't got to glaze me that hard, okay? Like I said, there were points where I could have done better. If it was just me versus Tim Pool, if you just saw me versus Tim Pool, then yeah, I walked away with it. It wasn't close. But Lactoid's a much better debater than Tim Pool was. So, Andrew Steele, welcome back to the show. J-Max says, Lactoid was a real disappointment. Dude straight up was pushing Putin's narrative while being objectively incorrect on multiple points. Okay. I mean, like I said, if you want to know Lactoid's points, go talk to Lactoid. He will tell you what he thinks. He's not shy about it. Kamikaze says Lactoid definitely was fondling El Putin's balls. Is he Spanish now? I didn't think that was the case. But we have some news, gang, that I wanted to cover a little bit. I want to talk about Garcia. Do you guys know who Garcia is? Okay. Garcia, let me bring this up on screen if I can. Yeah, here we go. This gentleman here. Garcia here was arrested, or deported, I should say. What is it? A few weeks ago now, to El Salvador Supermax prison, right? The little gulag they got going down there. And when I say gulag, I am only slightly exaggerating. It is a prison that is rife for human rights abuses. It is a prison that is overcrowded. They applies forced labor that doesn't properly feed or take care of the inmates. And people just disappear there. They just disappear there. So that's where they sent Garcia. This is Tricia McLaughlin. Okay. She says this. Because the debate now is, should they have sent Garcia here? Initially in the case, the administration said it was an accident. It was an administrative error. We did not mean to send him to El Salvador. Because when they were rounding up all the people, apparently there wasn't enough to fill the plane, so he got bumped up, and they kind of just threw him on the plane to fill a seat. At least that's how I understand it. The judge, by the judge I mean the Supreme Court of the United States has ordered them to facilitate the release of Garcia and the return to the United States of Garcia so they can do it right, okay? They can have due process. They have yet to do so. The administration claims it can't, that it can't force El Salvador to bring him back. El Salvador, Bukele, says, well, we can't send him back either because, we don't want to smuggle a terrorist into the United States. So they're going to keep this guy in prison, okay? Since that time, a lot of people have been trying to kind of play this propaganda game on, is this guy a good dude? Like, is this guy really a MS-13 gang member? Is he a violent criminal? Is he a threat? Should he have been deported at all, let alone to a supermax, right? And it's worth talking about because there's a lot to go over here. I think it's exposing a lot of people. So the administration, again, initially claimed it was an administrative error. Since then, Vice President J.D. Vance, said that he was a convicted MS-13 gang member. The evidence they provided that he was an MS-13 gang member was that he had a Chicago Bulls hat on and that he was fingered as a MS-13 gang member by one of their informants. The judges at the time said, okay, but they didn't deport him. They, in fact, in his appeal, they said, you know what, we're going to put a hold on your deportation, and we're going to put a withholding on deportation and strict orders not to deport you to El Salvador. Okay. So here's my take on this, gang. And I think I've told you this before, but I think I want to be clear. If this man is an MS-13 gang member who is a violent criminal, then I would have no problem with them deporting him. I would also have no problem with them deporting him had he just been an illegal immigrant, if they were simply deporting him to Lima, Peru, or some other country, gave him a ticket on a plane and said, get out of the United States. But that's not what we're doing here. That's not what they're doing here. They're sending him to a prison where they cannot get him back. A supermax prison. And I don't think that being an illegal immigrant, even if you are an illegal immigrant, deserves sending to one of these foreign torture prisons. I really don't. So let's see what Tricia McLaughlin has to say. It says, 1. When Garcia was arrested, he was found with rolls of cash and drugs. I've looked at the report and the arrest report. It does not say this. So if this was another arrest that they're speaking of, I don't know, but they haven't really shown this. This just doesn't seem to be true. 2. He was arrested with 2 other members of MS-13. 3. 2 judges found that he was a member of MS-13. That finding has not been disturbed. 4. When arrested, he was wearing what is effectively MS-13's uniform. So let's take this point by point. When Garcia was arrested, he was arrested in front of Home Depot for loitering. That was why they picked him up and stopped him. He was loitering in front of Home Depot looking for work. Here's his mugshot. Or maybe not his mugshot, but you know, where they line him up with the, I don't know what it's called. Fuck. He's wearing what looks to be a construction worker's uniform. You know, with the bright yellow so people can see him when he's working on the side of the road or something. Which has been characterized by Tricia McLaughlin here as effectively MS-13's uniform. Laughable. The 2 other members he was arrested with, who he was, again, outside of Home Depot. Cool it on the racist jokes, Kings. But he was actually outside of Home Depot. He was probably looking for work. And I guess the other people with him, 2 of them were MS-13 or something, allegedly. And that was used as evidence that he was MS-13. Look, I'll cut to the chase here. The evidence that the government has provided, at least so far, I wouldn't ban someone from my Discord with that amount of evidence, let alone send them to some supermax prison. I just wouldn't do it. Nyersock says, they mean the Bulls gear. You know this. Is that better? If they meant the Chicago Bulls hat as a sign he was an MS-13 member? Is that better? I don't think so. But at the end of the day, the evidence that I have seen is very paper thin. Now, the administration says they have more evidence. Fair enough. Show us. Show us the evidence. Look, I have no problem if you can prove he's a violent gang member, by all means. Lock him up. Send him away. Do what you need to do. But this guy has no arrest record, right? The worst thing that he's got is traffic tickets and we're going to talk about this in a second. I know some of you are going to jump on this. But apparently, in 2021, his wife filed some kind of domestic abuse complaint. And we're going to look at that. So those are the things that he has. But remember, They didn't detain him and deport him because of the domestic abuse complaint. That's never been the accusation that they've made. There's an old Soviet saying, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. This seems to be what this administration is doing in these cases. And I find it very worrying. Nairsock says, which is why you said it in a mocking junior high voice with a face. Yes, I am mocking the administration here because I feel the administration is worthy of mockery in this case. Phineas says, at least show his lawyer. There are reasons to keep some proceedings secret, but not having a legal advocate to challenge government's actions is improper. Yes. Look, I would advocate that the devil himself get due process because that protects my due process. It protects my rights. Let's look at some of the things that our vice president has been saying. Let's find it. Here's a little screed he went on to recently. Let's talk about it. Let's read it. Switch Enjoyer says, no, there is no due process for illegals. You're coping. That's just not true. And I want to talk about that as well, because I've made a comment to J.D. Vance, and I had a lot of people say this, that, illegal immigrants don't get due process. That has been found to be false over and over and over again. They are protected by both the Fifth Amendment and the Eighth Amendment, as well as other amendments, right? Anyone within our borders, whether they be here as visitors, whether they be here as criminals, right? Whether they be felons, whether they be citizens or not, are protected under our Constitution. Do immigrants have every single right that Americans have? No. They don't have the right to vote, for example. But they do have protection under the law, just like a citizen does. And one of those protections they have is due process, such as covered under the Fifth Amendment and the Eighth Amendment both. But we're going to get into it. So this idea that just because someone is here illegally, that they get no due process is just erroneous. But let's see what J.D. Vance has to say about the subject. Consider that Joe Biden allowed approximately 20 million illegal aliens into our country. This placed extraordinary burdens on our country. Our schools, hospitals, housing, and other essential services were overwhelmed. On top of that, many of these illegal aliens committed violent crimes or facilitated fentanyl and sex trafficking. That is the situation we inherited. The American people elected the Trump administration to solve this problem. The president has successfully stopped the inflow of illegal aliens, and now we must deport the people who came here illegally. To say the administration must observe due process is to beg the question. What process is due is a function of our resource, the public interest, and the status of the accused, the proposed punishment, and so many other factors. To put it in concrete terms, imposing the death penalty on an American citizen requires more legal process than deporting an illegal alien to their country of origin. When the media and the far left obsess over an MS-13 gang member, remember, he's referring here to Garcia, the one who was, they said he was an MS-13 gang member because of his Chicago Bulls hat. Remember that? So that's who he's talking about. Says, when the media and the far left obsess over an MS-13 gang member and demand that he be returned to the United States for a third deportation hearing, what they're really saying is they want the vast majority of illegal aliens to stay here permanently. Here's a useful test. Ask the people weeping over the lack of due process what precisely they propose for dealing with Biden's millions and millions of illegals. And with reasonable resource and administrative judge constraints, does their solution allow us to deport at least a few million people per year? If the answer is no, they've given the game away. They don't want border security. They don't want us to deport the people who've come into our country illegally. They want to accomplish through fake legal process what they failed to accomplish politically, the ratification of Biden's illegal migrant invasion. President Trump and I will not stand for it. So, his argument is that it's just too hard and inconvenient to give them due process. It's going to cost too much money. It's going to take too many resources. Look, if you want and need more resources to do your job properly, go to Congress, get those resources. That's what it's for. Congress controls the power of the purse. They can give you more resources so that you have more judges, more ICE agents. Everything you need can be given to you and can be set up. To act as if this is an impossible task, this Sisyphean effort to just follow the law is nonsense. It's nonsense. And he knows he's lying here, gang. He's a Yale law guy, right? Or I'm not sure if he's a law guy, but he went to Yale. He's not stupid. He knows he's lying here. He knows he's misrepresenting the facts of the matter. This guy's scum. And I don't say that lightly. This guy's a scumfuck. A very little petty man who lies in order to try to make a point. The facts of the matter is we've deported millions of migrants before. Under Obama, 3 million were deported. Okay? It's not impossible. We can do it. You can do it properly. And if you can't do it properly, then if your policy cannot be done legally, then your policy cannot be done. Your policy should bow to the law. Make it so your policy, it could be done legally. And you can do it. It's possible to do so. I am all for deporting illegal migrants. Go for it. I am not for sending illegal migrants to a supermax prison in a foreign country where they are basically serving a life sentence and never get out of it. People disappear in these places. I'm not for that. I think that's a horror. If you think that someone who hops a fence in a border has done no violent crime and simply is here illegally, we can say, yes, that is a crime. You should be deported. But give them a plane ticket and send them to not a supermax prison. You don't gotta roll out the red carpet for them, but you don't have to send them to the gulag either. Oh, he was a law school student? I was right about that? I'm right about a lot of things, gang. I'm right about. Sneed McPhee says, Whick, you just lied. You're scum. What did I lie about? So first of all, can you source the 20 million number, Sneed McPhee? Because I've tried to find that 20 million number. I can't. The most I can find is like a few million, like 10, 11, but nowhere near 20. Can you tell me why you want to justify sending innocent people to a torture prison, Sneed McPhee? Is that why do you want to do this? If you're going to say I'm lying, you better be able to source what I'm lying about. But feel free, call in. It's a call-in show. Jump on. We'll talk. Sneed McPhee says, you said they deported him over hat. That's not true. It was an informant. Well, if you'd been on the show, I did tell you the two reasons that they sent him, the judge said that he might be an MS-13 guy was because of an informant, a discredited informant that fingered him, as well as the hat. I said both. So no, I did not lie. You can rewind the tape. It's there. Gelatinous Rube says, he goes home because he's here illegally, end of story. He's not going home, he's going to prison, a supermax prison. We're not just sending him to his house over there. We're sending him to a place that is known for human rights abuses, where people disappear. We're not just putting them on a plane and sending them to a city. We would not be having this conversation if that's what we were doing. But that is not what we are doing. We are sending them to a supermax prison known for its human rights abuses. That's a fundamentally different thing. Zero Fuck says, did you see Bondi drop some more info on him a couple of hours ago? Are you talking about the domestic abuse stuff that his wife filed in 2021? Or are you talking about something else? Link it to me because I haven't seen it. But again, we're gonna have a panel on this tomorrow where we go over all the stuffs. I'm just talking about it because I want to rant on it. I'm trying to get it out of my system so I don't interrupt too much tomorrow during the panel because I'm moderating, right? So I'm trying to get it out of my system now. And here's the thing: you guys are saying that this is an 80-20 issue, gang. I think you're gonna be shocked at where the 80 is here. Let's look at some poll numbers here. Give us a second. Is Trump handling the deportations correctly? Let's see what the polls have to say. Here we go. This is a poll conducted between January 9th and February 28th. Deport undocumented immigrants who have lived here in the U.S. for more than 2 years. Negative 37. Okay. So that's, most people disapprove of that. Deport undocumented immigrants who are parents of U.S. citizens by birth. Negative 36. You guys are underwater on that. Deport undocumented immigrants who have not broken laws in the U.S. except for immigration laws. Negative 18. You guys are underwater on that. Deport immigrants who are living in the U.S. illegally back even if they have lived here for a number of years, have jobs, and no criminal record. Negative 14. Underwater on that. Deporting U.S. citizens convicted of crimes to foreign prisons. This is a weird number because this number is way lower than the disapproval here is lower than I think it should be. But you guys are underwater on that too. And remember, Trump is talking about that. Trump said to Bukele during their meeting that he wants Bukele to build 5 more of these prisons so he can send U.S. criminals, United States citizens, to these foreign torture prisons. Okay, so and he said this. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm hair on fire about it, but I'm not lying to you. I'm not misrepresenting it. Deport all immigrants in the U.S. illegally who have not been convicted of a crime. Negative 7. Cutting federal funds for sanctuary cities in the states. Negative 5. Holding immigrants in a large detention centers while determining whether or not they should be deported. Negative 4. Using Guantanamo Bay to detain thousands of migrants deported from the U.S. Negative 4. Using the U.S. military to arrest and deport immigrants without legal status. Negative 3. And here's where we get to the approvals. An executive order declaring an emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border, promising to deploy troops, construct additional border barriers, and implement mass deportations. That's approved. 11. That's a positive 11. And then deport undocumented immigrants who have been accused of committing violent crimes is at a whopping 81 points. Okay. So when people say this is an 80-20 issue, perhaps. But it ain't 80-20 on Trump's side. Let's be real clear about this. Let's be real clear about this. And if you think, oh, well, that's one of those fake polls, let's look at Pew Research. Do you guys want to go into that poll? Let's bring it up. About a third of U.S. adults say all immigrants in the U.S. illegally should be deported. Half say some. Okay. So I think I would be in favor. I'd be in the some category here. That's me. I'm in the some category. Almost no one's in the none category. But when you look at the some category, okay, so only 32%, only about a third of the country thinks all illegal immigrants should be deported. It's a 70-30 issue in my favor. Okay, frankly. But let's look at the details of the breakdown of the sum, because it's interesting. Nearly all who favor deporting some immigrants living in the country illegally say that committing violent crime is grounds for deportation. Agreed. So among those who support some deportations and say percent who say immigrants in the U.S. illegal should be deported if they commit violent crimes, 97%. So almost everyone. Okay. Committed nonviolent crimes, it's split 50-50 between the sum. I say that depending on the nonviolent crime, like if it's a traffic ticket, I don't think you should be deported for a traffic ticket. If you've been embezzling money, yeah, you should probably go away, right? So it depends. Arrived in the country in the last 4 years, 44%. I don't know if I have a time limit on this. I think if you've been in the country for a day or if you've been in the country for 10 years, I don't know. It depends on the context. Have a job? Only 15%. Only 15% say those who are working a job should be deported. Again, this is with the sum category. That's not a lot. 14% say are parents of you children born in the U.S. Not a lot. Came to the U.S. as children, 9%. Yeah, I don't think that if you are an illegal immigrant who came here because your mom and dad took you here when you were 6 years old, right? And you've been living in America for all your life and you're 20, I don't think they should send you back. I just don't. And then only 5% say to deport those who came here illegally that are married to a U.S. citizen. So when we talk about 80-20 issues, and the reason I'm bringing this up is I think that a lot of Americans are watching this play out, right? They're watching the deportations and how they're being handled. And a lot of them are just like, no, this isn't how we should do this. This isn't how we should act as Americans. I think most of them are saying this. As I said at the beginning of the show, and I made not the beginning, but earlier in the show, I made an apology to Drone Tech because I assumed, because he was a Trump supporter, that he would be supporting these because he supports deporting illegal immigrants. He does. That's one of the reasons he voted for Trump. But even he is seeing the way that they're doing this as absolutely not okay. I think that most people do care about this process, do care about how it's being done, do care about what is happening with their due process rights. Rabid Wombat, what are you asking me? Rabid Wombat asks, would you support putting the parents in a workers' prison to pay for the foster care of the child until they turn 21? No. No, I wouldn't. Mooncake. Hi, Mooncake. Hey, Mooncake, do you want to call in? It's a call-in show. You want to call in and talk for a little bit? Mooncake says America is disgusting. Oh, Zetsway. Thank you for the subs. Oh, I think Zetsway's backstage. Let me bring him in. Hi.
Oh, hey. I wasn't expecting to pull me in. I wasn't trying to buy my way in, but.
Oh no. You're not buying your way in. You're welcome anytime. But if you do want, gang, if you're watching this and you do want to buy your way in, you can. That's possible. But yeah, Mooncake, I'll talk to Zetsway for a bit, and if you want to jump on after he's done, yeah, feel free. But yeah, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, I agree with the Supreme Court's decision overall, though it seems like sometimes, I guess, I'm not certain the way people frame certain things for saying, do you think he had a stay from being deported, period? Is that your understanding?
Oh, me? No.
Yeah. So
I think he was specifically forbidden from being deported to El Salvador. Where they
deported
him.
All of this was identical, but was Brazil instead, you would have no issues right now?
Well, it depends. Is he being deported to a supermax in Brazil?
Let's say it was. Then
yes, I would still have an issue, only because I don't think being an illegal immigrant should get you sent to a supermax prison. I think it should get you out of the country, right? If they gave him a civilian ticket and sent him on a civilian plane and did just released him back in Brazil, okay, that's their purview, that's their right.
So then, are you making so you're kind of making a unique claim, even that the plaintiffs themselves aren't making? Because their position is they would have no issue if they had done this exact same thing, but to Brazil, they would say we have no leg to stand on.
Oh, I'm I'm not making a legal argument. I'm making a moral argument.
Yeah, moral. Okay, then I completely agree with that. Like the entire idea of saying I don't know why. Like, there's no purpose to. At least I'm aware of why we are holding these people, and then especially there are people that have open deportation orders and they ignore and like they don't show up to things. He's not one of them. He shows up to his freaking hearings. So at any point, like of all, like, so even if I can grant the idea that says, look, we have a massive number of people who have outstanding deportation orders, and if we just don't detain them, then we can never get them. This isn't the guy. And so I have no. But the other thing is that in terms of like the MS-13 thing, I'm trying to find anything on it. But from what I can find is, I mean, at least from a legal standpoint, he is ruled as the order wasn't like he's not a MS-13 member. That prior to that, it was determined whether rightfully or wrongfully that he was one, which is why part of the whole thing goes, you have outstanding order. So it feels weird to go like, I can't find the specific details of those hearings. And so even if like I would say I don't think he is, it doesn't change the fact that like sometimes there's like legal things that are you can't just you have to appeal that. And in the same sense that they have to do due process as well, you can't just undo it because you don't feel like they had a good reason to. You'd have to like appeal that thing to try and say you ruled.
I do want to correct someone in chat real quick. I don't mean to cut you off, but Andrew Steele says, we quote, send them to Supermax, unquote, but really El Salvador chooses what to do with them. They can release them into society and we wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So Andrew Steele, we're paying them to do this. We're paying them specifically to hold them in these Supermax prisons. Yeah. That's the deal. So
that's the other person. You got it. Finish.
Yeah, well, to detain them, I should say. They don't have to do it in the human rights violating foreign torture gulag, I suppose, but they are, and we know that they are. And I think it just, yeah.
We have a contract with them. It's not, and another thing I can't find. I can't find the contract of the terms because you would say they are holding them. On
They've been asked. The administration has been asked to release the contract and the terms. They've refused.
Yeah, and so the problem is that because the thing is that would tell us in saying, also, one, it's even hard to call it deportation. It's not a deportation because deportation means you relinquish control. You don't. I can't think of a single time I've ever used the word deportation to refer to a time where we maintain control of someone. Like deportation means you've sent them away and you don't have them anymore. At which point the government would be right if this was a deportation. If we'd sent him even wrongly, let's say we had it was against the law, but we sent him to El Salvador. We have no jurisdiction anymore because he's a Salvadorian citizen in El Salvador. The U.S. government can't reach back in and to go like, whoopsie, we claim your citizen back for us. But because we maintain control, and the government does, and the thing is, it feels so. Even at the hearing, like when Trump was there with the president, he's like, "Well, what do you want us to do? Smuggle him back in?" And you're like, "Are you saying they didn't even ask you? Would you not? Does the contract not stipulate that you're supposed to be holding them? It's not permanent either. This wasn't. This isn't. Is it supposed to be a holding you prior to us making a decision? Are you telling us that they're holding them and refusing to cooperate with us at all? So we're paying them and they're admitting to they're not letting us have control. The point was, why would I contract with someone to hold someone if they won't give them back to me?
I believe they have every ability. And I think most people see that they're just playing games. But what concerns me, right? Yeah. And what really kind of makes me here, I'll say this. I'll say it this way. I have a problem, gang. And maybe you can help me. That's why maybe you can help me.
Sure.
I'm beginning to hate these people. I don't want to. I don't think it's good. I think it's bad for me to hate, right? It's like drinking poison and hoping someone else's die. It doesn't really help the situation. Nothing gets improved. It's not good. But nevertheless, I feel it. I feel hate for the people who are cheering this on, who are watching us send these people to Supermax prisons and then saying, hell yeah, brother, and then high-fiving each other while potentially innocent people are put in a fucking horror show. Because, again, this isn't the only... the Garcia situation is just one of several situations where the government... we're not really even sure if they got the right guy, where they've just been rounding people up. There's an incident with a gay barber who got sent here. Again, the accusation is they did this by accident. It was a mistake. There are accusations where a guy got flagged as an MS-13 gang member because he had an autism awareness tattoo, right? It's horrific. So I guess what I'm asking is, what's a good way to just not hate these people, but still combat them? Because I do think what they're advocating for is evil. Right? It's evil. If there is a hell, people who do the things that they're advocating for will burn in it. But I don't think hating them's the way, right? I think hating them's a very bad idea for a lot of reasons, and I don't want to hate anyone. So what's a good way to still combat it while not hating?
I guess I don't see a reason. I mean, in terms of like hating them, the idea of saying that mistakes are made, the thing is, especially with that happened before as well. It's not like we've never deported someone we shouldn't have or claimed someone. There's even, like,
just to be clear,
videos
I'm not
on
talking about
documentaries on people.
I'm not talking to people who say like, oh, it's a mistake and we should fix it. I still want to
Yeah.
deport people, but let's fix the mistakes. I'm talking to people who are cheering on even the mistakes, right?
Yeah, they view basically them all as illegal immigrants. They believe they're being
I don't care
restricted
what
by
they
these,
did.
these activist judges, and therefore, like,
Yeah.
So I think the reason why is they're not. I don't believe, at least the ones I've talked to, even like I have some family, like my uncle, that they're not. Their view is that basically these are gang members. That basically we have all these outstanding deportation orders, and just no one does anything. And so the idea of saying like, well, no, that's the right way. The right way is for us to do nothing. And they're incredibly frustrated by that. And so I don't believe that they view like they're being sent out because they hate all these people, or that they even are like cheering it on because like they're like, oh, I want him in the maximum security prison or something like that. I don't even think that's a part they care about. Their position is basically saying our current system is basically just not deporting people, period. That even if they get due process, even if they're told to be deported, they still just don't. And so they're cheering on the fact that someone's actually doing something. And you go that it's, but at least that's my experience. I haven't seen people, but maybe there are worse people that are cheering on, just going like, "Oh boy, I sure do like seeing people suffer." But
no,
that's been my experience.
They do
at least.
though. Like they are happy that the libs are being owned, and they don't care who gets hurt. And
yes. Then okay, that one's easy. We all embrace the darkness, basically. So if you look at it, I mean, actually, you maybe not as much, because even like back when like Destiny, the whole the Trump shooter thing, that I am not like that. The number of times I've had people that they Schadenfreude, when bad things happen to people you don't like, the amount of times where people celebrate it, they will constantly deride everyone else for when someone they like gets celebrated, but they'll immediately do it. That's why they go Dave Rubin, and the whole thing where he was going like, how could you possibly celebrate the Trump shooter getting shot? And then you look back and he was like posting memes and joking about Nancy Pelosi's husband getting attacked with a hammer. You know,
there's a lot of people who were aghast at what Destiny was joking about the guy. I was aghast too. I thought it was gross, ghoulish. And if you watch my channel, you saw me do this. I took him to task for it, right? But the same people who were aghast at that are now cheering this guy getting sent to a foreign torture prison. And I'm like, oh, you motherfucker, you don't care. You just cared it happened to your side. You don't care.
Exactly what it is.
And it does make me view them differently. But again, I don't want to hate. And I want to make sure that, like, because like for the people who are on the right who are trying to understand my perspective right now, and I know a lot of you, if you're in my show, you're trying to understand my perspective. This is my what you guys are doing to me is doing right now is an equivalent to what you saw Destiny do with the fireman who got shot at the Trump rally. You're celebrating harm to someone who does not deserve harm to be celebrated to them. And and you're trying to justify it. And it's just as gross to me as how you felt Destiny was in that instance. So.
You have a principled stance on this that I probably never, like, you're the first person I think might actually have a principled stance on this. I don't think, like, I think most people are that hypocritical, and not even hypocritical, but they believe that there are times to justify, like, that's like, I don't know what else, Schadenfreude, I guess, is to embrace the darkness, basically, and celebrate bad things happening to people you don't like. And most people do that, and then also wag their finger when they think it's their side, because they believe it's deserved for their opponents, but not deserved for themselves. That it's not a principled stance on should we celebrate bad things happening to people, but rather, and that is, if I have good cause, then I think you are rare in that sense, that most people are that way.
And I'm being really honest with you, is that position, that principled position that I hold, and I really do believe.
Yeah.
Man, it's hard. It's hard when I see the people like that I stood up for. I stood up against Destiny for. Turn around and just do the same fucking thing. The same fucking thing. And I'm like,
I take kind of the reverse of that. You are kind of holding them both, where I am more forgiving of both. That says I actually don't have a problem with what Destiny did. I understand based on his perspective of like what he viewed Trump as and all those things. it makes sense why he's schadenfreude. It makes sense why you go, I had some cousins that were like, are so anti-Trump, or they were really so like when he got COVID and stuff and hoping for him to die. And I had other family members going, how could you possibly do that? And it's like, because of what they view as like that. If you view them as being normal, that he goes, it's normal for us when we're frustrated and angry at situations, that they're not really, they don't actually want him to die. They're not actually, in the same sense that I don't think that even he was saying he didn't think he deserves to die, but they are going to kind of embrace the Schadenfreude a bit, at least like online. Okay. It'd be different, like, so for Destiny, let's say that he, instead of just saying that like on his Twitter thing, if you'd asked him and said, would you like message his family and like prank call them to laugh at them and like send your fans to it? Would you show up at his funeral to try and like to mock his children in front of him for him dying? And I suspect he'd say no. That goes that his ability to say, I'm going to laugh at it on his own personal Twitter feed doesn't mean that he's like, he thinks like I should go do horrible things to the person in their family to make them suffer. In the same sense that the people who like celebrate like that, my cousins who were celebrating like Trump getting COVID and things like that, I don't think they'd actually like go to his family and go find Barron Trump and go, I sure hope your father dies. You're like that there's a difference between saying kind of embracing, I said, Schadenfreude, embracing the darkness on your own time versus actually like actively going after people. Gotcha. And that's kind of where I don't hate people because I can see that people do it. I see everyone do it. And I genuinely believe that deep down that they wouldn't support they don't want the people harassed or anything. They're just kind of expressing it on their social media thing. And unfortunately, and that's that they're not trying to actually harm basically people. Maybe. Any of them, not even like not Destiny with the guy who got shot, not the people now who are celebrating this thing. That it's more of an issue that they feel overall with illegal immigration, and this is the way that they embrace that thing.
Yeah. So Phineas had something to say, and I want to read it because it is kind of echoes my sentiment in a way. I'm not sure I 100% agree with it, but I understand it. So Phineas says this: public Schadenfreude is worse and more damaging than the personal messages because it encourages a public spiral into cruelty and sadism. And I do, look, if you want to have a private party, right, with yourself and your buddies in private, there. But to do it publicly, I do agree with Phineas. It kind of pushes the boulder a bit. The snowball that kind of turns into an avalanche. But Mooncake, hi, how are you?
Hey, hi. I know I haven't been here in a while, so it's kind of like
you've been
insane, but
it's okay. It's good to have you back. What are your thoughts here on the deportations and stuff? Go ahead.
Okay, so I just so you know, I didn't catch everything that like I don't know his name. Zetsu was saying.
Zetsui.
Zetsui. Sorry. But in general, it's really disturbing because like I think most people know like I'm Canadian, so it's like this outside looking in, and we're such like close neighbors. That my concern is deporting without due process. Like we're running into an issue where they're not even, I think, seeing people as human anymore. It's more of like a numbers game. And I think they're targeting anyone at this point. Like, I forget his name. I just know his last name, Garcia, who was sent to El Salvador. I just don't know how you could look at a situation like that and not be completely outraged as a country. And there are people who are genuinely cheering it on and calling him a gang member, a terrorist, all these things without actual proof. And from what I found online, I can't find any proof of that. So it's like, at this point, it's like it's what Americans want. They're moving more towards an authoritarian, fascist country, and I think it started in 2016 that this is kind of what they wanted. So when people say, I don't think they mean any harm when they're cheering it on, I think they do mean harm. I think they do want harm to come to illegal immigrants. They want harm not even just to illegal immigrants. I think people of color, LGBTQ, I think it's all wrapped up into one thing, and eventually it's going to expand into more.
What do you think, Zetsui? Is that a good read or not, in your opinion?
I feel like it's the same question of saying, is that because the due process thing? I mean, if we're getting from a legal standpoint, if this had simply been in Brazil and not El Salvador, then due process had been fulfilled and he doesn't even have any complaints. All the same situation. I don't feel like that hits the heart of you going, I don't like, and I agree with Whick there. I suspect is, I don't like the idea of us at all detaining people and having them, holding them in these, like that the behavior on its own, even if due process was maintained, it wouldn't change my personal morals on it, saying like, if only it was in Brazil. If it was in a torture prison in Brazil, 2 thumbs up from me. I'd be going, no, it more has to do with a principled stance of saying, why exactly are you doing this?
The due process does make it worse, right? The due process violations does make it worse. in my
due
opinion.
process is a procedural, and so procedural issues just have procedural
Sure, but the
solutions to
reason,
them.
but
there's a right to it.
yeah, but let
Like,
me
you have
let me give me a moment because I want to elucidate this point because I think it's an important point. Like, the process may be procedural, but it is still important. And the fact that the administration thinks that they do not have to follow these procedures is a problem for me. It indicates that they are willing to simply ignore precedent, ignore the law, ignore these things for this specific group of people. And I may not go as far as Mooncake here, but I do think that given a lot of Trump's other statements, that how they are looking into perhaps deporting, or not deporting, but detaining in foreign prisons U.S. citizens that have committed crimes is also very, very red flag, worrisome, red line for me, right? Does that make sense?
Somewhat, but can I ask you? So, hypothetical. Let's say that you're going to be detained, and you have and that either you're going to be detained, let's say, in a maximum security U.S. federal prison, in which will be a horrible experience for you, or there is a minimum security prison, let's say Canada, that they're going to detain you there instead. And you go, well, for due process says I have to be detained in the max. Like, would you choose the horror prison over the minimum security one because you'd say, well, that one's a foreign country?
Look, if it was me, I'd choose the minimum security one because I'm selfish. Right?
Let's say they did it to you without even asking. Would you appeal that decision and say my due process has been violated?
No, because it ended up in, specifically for me, a better outcome. Look, if the lack of due process ends up to be in a better outcome, then I think we could just kind of ignore it. But the fact is that these due process violations aren't ending up in a better outcome, but in fact a much worse one, and that's the problem.
So a federal, but again, I'm just not certain if a maximum security federal prison in the U.S. would I assume I would hope is better than the El Salvadorian one, considering but the idea of it's not a nice place there either. It's not like it's a better outcome. It goes, but
you understand why the process is important. That even if we do think that criminals should be detained, and I do, I'm not a prison abolitionist by any means. You got to prove these things, right? You got to show these things.
That's what I'm going to think. Procedurally, I agree, but I guess personally, I just don't want him detained, period. And it's not a due process. So for me, it's not a due process concern. It's if you go, well, we deported him, like I said, to a torture prison in Brazil, so therefore we did due process. My response would be going, I never cared about that to begin with. I cared at saying, why exactly are you detaining him to begin with? Why is he the target? Why are you expending resources? Even his statement of saying, well, due process costs money. There is the point is to say that because due process, we use that word. It's a vague term to say how much do you get? Do you get one appeal? Do you get 3 appeals? Do you or which one constitutes?
So when I say due process,
there's a setup system.
Go ahead, Mooncake, please.
Sorry, Whick. No, I'm saying there's a setup system, right? There's procedures for a reason, and I think once you start to override these procedures, what's the point of having it in the first place, right? It starts to water down your legal system. So I think when people just use the word due process, it's because everyone does deserve their day in court. But I wanted to ask a more specific question. Why the example of Brazil? Was Garcia from Brazil or something?
No, that's what I'm saying. That the order is only that. The due process that was violated was he can't. Everything that happened is fine except for the fact that it was El Salvador. That the due process is saying specifically he couldn't be sent to El Salvador. That's what I'm saying. If this was in Brazil, all of his there is no due process concerns at that point. If this simply was in another location.
No, I think due process would still be an issue because he's never been to Brazil. So what would be the point of sending him to a foreign country he'd never been to? But I think part of the problem is also that he was in fear of gang prosecution in El Salvador. I think that's why there's more of a heavier factor here.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why he was said not to El Salvador. And the reason I'm saying is that even the plaintiffs aren't arguing that due process wise he couldn't be sent somewhere else. It's even in their own brief is saying if they'd sent him literally anywhere, done exactly the same thing, just at a different location, they admit that they'd have no case and due process would be fulfilled.
So just to be clear, is there a world in which, at least an American thing, that you're allowed to send someone to just another country? I'm just curious now. Is that
you could a contract to detain someone? Because like I said, the example I gave to Whick, we're saying there might be times where you even be okay with it. Where if it was just we have a contract with Canada for a minute because we don't have enough minimum security, you guys do, and so some of it rather than throw our guys in maximum security, we will instead contract with your minimum security ones to hold some of our lesser offenders so that they're not with again in the maximum security. That would still be the same thing of us not detaining you in a foreign country, but we'd be okay with that situation because the goal, you'd be detained either way. It's a matter of safety. For this one, especially if they're saying they can't get him back, that's where I'm going, okay, you don't have, if you either you have control of him or you don't. And if you don't, you can't send people there because you're saying that you're not, because your position is they're holding him there.
It does violate,
to hold him there.
Yeah, it does violate their it risks to a much higher degree violating, I think, the 8th Amendment right of prisoners, even, I think, foreign prisoners. This is why
it's a double-edged sword. Either they can get him back, either it's not a violation, and which means they can get him back, or they can't get him back, at which point it's a violation because you're saying you're sending people there. You told us you have a contract for them to hold him with the ability to get him back, and now you're telling us you can't do it, which means, and if you can't do it, then why are you sending people there? Because you're telling me that you can't maintain control over them. And so either you can get them back, because in the same sense where if they were in a federal prison, you'd be able to get them back, right? You have a contract with these people. Same thing with the whole example of Canada. You'd be able to contract and say, hey, you're detaining our minimum security guys. When we call for it, you send them back to us. That would be in the contract. And I suspect it's in the El Salvador one. This isn't a permanent contract. I think it's currently for 1 year. And so it goes, what happens at the end of that year? Are you saying this? And also, that's why they said, like, stop paying them. If you're telling us they're violating the contract, that you have a contract with them to detain people and they will not return them, why are you paying them?
I think my opinion on this would basically be like, I don't think you should be allowed to just send anybody like out of the country. But maybe that's just like a basic take. I find that highly inappropriate. And I think if you're going to have an issue in your country, there should be enough prisons or enough facilities to facilitate that, or whatever it is you need to do if you need to send him to a prison. But I think doing it in another country is a little odd.
It is odd. It's just, like I said, that it's going to come down to a situation by situation case where I could imagine, like I said, the example I gave, I wouldn't really have an issue because I have no concerns over saying, is this being misused as a way to basically disappear people? The El Salvador thing does seem like that's what's happening. The minimum security example is just saying, I don't functionally have an issue with us detaining people, especially like you're like in northern New York, something like that. And it's like, oh yeah, there's one right across the border. There's situations where it wouldn't be a big deal as a principled stance, but it's a matter of saying, what is it a proxy for? It goes, why are you sending people to other states? And why are you sending this guy to El Salvador? And it doesn't appear to be because of like, oh yeah, well, you see, we have a good reason for it. There doesn't appear to be a good reason for it.
So one of the issues I have with the whole thing, right, is, well, first of all, look, I know I shouldn't be looking at chat right now, but I am. Basshole says, so being sent to one of the safest countries in the world is a bad outcome? They're not sent to the country. They're sent to the Supermax prison within the country. It's a very big difference. And I think I said this earlier, but I'll repeat it again. I would have much less of a problem with all of this if that's all they were doing. If they were like, because I'm not against deportations. I'm not. If you are here illegally and you are just kind of breaking the law and stuff, you can get out of the country. I'm cool with it. But I don't think that being an illegal immigrant should get you sent to a foreign jail. That's where I have an issue, a moral issue. I'm talking above a legal issue. I think it is immoral that we take a stranger who is in our country, right, even if they did get here illegally, and we send them to a foreign torture prison. That's crazy.
It also, we keep saying, because I think it's even I keep saying it, is that he hasn't been deported. He's being detained. He's still within the grasp of the U.S. government. The fact is, he's being detained on behalf of the U.S. government. Deportation implies that,
do we
deportation,
have any proof that he's still alive? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but do we have proof? I'm just curious about Garcia. I'm just research.
Someone's going to go see him.
Still alive?
I forget who it is. There's some senator that's
the senator, actually. The senator didn't see him. He was refused. I actually have this up. Hold on. Give me a second. So you guys want to listen to just real quick, you guys want to listen to the little senator and what he said? Real quick? Let me see if I can share this on the screen. Please. Give me a second.
Because if he's dead, this might as well be 1938 Nazi Germany. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but like...
If you guys click on that, you can see, right? You click on the watch live button, we can all look at this together.
I clicked on it.
Okay, everyone seeing? Get the volume up. Okay, let's listen to what he has to say.
Courts of the United States have said there's no evidence to support the charge that he's part of MS-13. So I asked the vice president whether or not El Salvador has any evidence that he's part of MS-13 or has committed a crime. So I asked the vice president if Abrego Garcia has not committed a crime, and the U.S. courts have found that he was illegally taken for the United States, and the government of El Salvador has no evidence that he was part of MS-13. Why is El Salvador continuing to hold him in CCOT? And his answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at CCOT. And I pointed out that neither the government of El Salvador nor the Trump administration has presented evidence to support the claim that he's committed any kind of criminal acts. And so why not release Abrego Garcia today? And he said what President Bukele said the other day at the White House, which that El Salvador can't smuggle Mr. Abrego Garcia into the United States. And I said, I'm not asking him to smuggle Mr. Abrego Garcia into the United States. I'm simply asking him to open the door of CCOT and let this innocent man walk out. And I pointed out that the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, has said that the United States would send a plane to El Salvador to pick him up. And why did she do that? Because the Supreme Court of the United States, in a ruling of 9-0, has said that the Trump administration has to facilitate his return to the United States. Now, there's no evidence that the Trump administration is complying with that order. There's no evidence that they're complying with that order. In fact, the United States Embassy here has told me they've received no direction from the Trump administration to help facilitate his release. So the Trump administration is clearly in violation of American court orders. But that still leaves the question, why is the government of El Salvador continuing to imprison a man where they have no evidence he's committed any crime, and they've not been provided any evidence from the United States that he's committed a crime?
What do we think, gang?
There's a lot. I mean, I say overall, I still agree with the point, but again, it's a matter of saying that, one, for the MS-13 thing, from what I can tell, again, I need to find the actual documents. They're hard to locate the specific ones, but it appears he has, again, rightfully or wrongfully, he was ruled to be part, the thing for MS-13, that he is part of it.
There's no proof. There's literally no proof.
It's not about a proof thing. It's about a ruling. It's saying that he was ruled as such.
You can't send a person to a facility for criminals when you haven't been proven to be a criminal.
They don't have to prove it to you.
What? But so it's not been proved to the government. El Salvador, he literally said El Salvador doesn't have proof. Where? Okay, can you show us that, please?
No, that's what I'm saying. The exact actual documents I can't find, but in the actual initial hearing, so when he was arrested in 2019, they basically said he was MS-13 and that he was going to be charged and he could be removed.
You have
after which he then.
Do you have the arrest information of 2019?
No, I'm just saying the specific documents. What I have are the actual the filings from the parties when they actually are doing their appeals. Sure. Here's the applications. Throwing it in chat.
Give me a second.
Or where can I?
Just put it in the general chat.
Yeah,
Okay,
anyway.
general chat. There it is. All right. So these, what I'm posting here is these are the applications that basically the Supreme Court, basically both of them going through their background and discussing basically the entire procedures up until now. So in 2019, he was arrested with other people and was found and said that basically they said he was MS-13, whether he is or not. I could even just accept and say, I think he's not. The fact is that under the ICJ, it basically said that they found that he was a verified member of the ICJ and that it couldn't be rebutted. It then also said that it would be dangerous to send him back to El Salvador, and so he was not able to be done so, and that he was then decided that he would be released and didn't have to do check-ins, basically. And so he's been checking in since.
Let me check, because from what I did a quick Google search as well, and it said that he was arrested along with 3 other men, which is what I think you mentioned.
Yes.
However, no charges were actually applied against him because they could not find proof of him being even in a gang. I'll have to take a second to read what
charges
you just
of what?
said.
So, as I understand, he was denied. So, what he was doing is he was denied bond or he was denied
yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, I can
right?
read it. It's right here. It's what is it?
Because he was deemed to be a risk. Right?
Yeah, it said that He failed to meet his burden in demonstrating that his release from custody would not pose a danger to others. The IGJ thus denied his request for release on bond. The Board of Immigration Appeals affirmed, explaining that the IG had appropriately considered allegations of gang affiliations against Abogado Garcia, determining that he has not demonstrated that he is not a danger to property or persons.
So yes, it wasn't a conviction. It wasn't a conviction that he was an MS-13 agent or whatever. It was saying that, hey, there's some evidence here that we think that you probably might be a risk. You haven't demonstrated that you're not, so we're going to deny your bond.
What is the conviction? What is the conviction you think he would be like? So you're not charged with. There's not a crime that says, "Are you MS-13?"
Sure.
So you're not charged with that.
Well, if you participate in a gang, usually there could be, for example, gun charges. I don't know, selling drugs. I'm not too sure.
It would just be a court finding. So if the court finds that you are, it's not a conviction. It'd just be saying that we determined that you can be treated as such. Basically, saying that like you can like, well, here's our evidence for why we think he is one. He goes, he can't rebut it. Therefore, the purpose of this proceeding, you are, which is why he was denied a bond. It's not a conviction. It just means that you will be treated as though you are.
Was he denied this bond, in 2019?
Yeah. And then in October 2019, he conceded that he could be removed from the U.S. However, they determined it's more likely than not that if he was returned to El Salvador, he would be subject to persecution on account of his affiliation with his mother, whose earnings from the business had allegedly been targeted by the Barrio 18 gang. And so he was granted withholding of removal to El Salvador. And that it only basically bars him being deported to that specific location. And so he could have been still, at that time, it could have decided just to go, fine, we'll send you somewhere else then.
But they didn't. They didn't.
Yes.
Instead,
they said, we
but
will.
There's still no convictions.
What they did.
My concern is that there's still no convictions at all here.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my concern is that, like, to send someone, unless I guess Americans are just American, I guess the law system is so different that if there's no convictions, how is it still appropriate? Even if you maybe have a slight inclination that maybe he could be possibly part of a gang, to send him to a foreign prison.
He's not being deported for being a gang member. He's in the country illegally, and it was ruled that he could be deported because he entered the country illegally and therefore is subject to deportation.
But then they said that he couldn't. Well, he shouldn't be allowed. Like, he couldn't. He had a thing that said that, like, he
couldn't be removed to El Salvador. He could be removed somewhere else. Yes, that's the part that's incorrect.
Yeah,
I'm saying that if they sent him to a different location, then there would be no problem here.
Okay, but they didn't. They sent him to El Salvador. So I feel like we have to deal with the issue. Like, we could talk about what could have been, what could have happened, but I think that we should just discuss what's actually has happened and what is happening. And the fact is, he was sent to El Salvador after they said that he wasn't supposed to be. That's just the issue itself.
Yeah, no, and I agree. If that's all it is, then it just says, yeah, then he should be. And the question of saying, right now, we haven't heard from the U.S. government, basically, because the Supreme Court said they had to, like, basically list out what they're doing to facilitate it. They can't effectuate it, but they do have to facilitate it. And I suspect they have every ability to facilitate the release of the guy. And so I think they're just playing fucking footsie when they're trying to pretend like, oh, he just won't, he's telling us no. But the idea of saying, but again, this is a procedural thing that has procedural solutions.
But so I'm just curious now. Do you believe he's still alive?
Gun to my head, yes, because I suspect the El Salvador doesn't want them to, like, I think they very much specifically, like, that would piss off the U.S. government, and he's very much sucking off Trump right now. So him showing up being dead would be very, very bad for the entire deal between the two of them. So I suspect they are still alive, not because they're so nice, but rather because they don't want to stop. He doesn't want to take Trump's dick out of his mouth.
So my thing is, why would the Trump administration be dragging their feet if they know, like, for example, this is such like a hot political issue right now? I'm just curious about your thoughts. Why would they be dragging their feet on getting him back?
In terms of that, so one is that they're trying to invalidate it in other ways. So because they said the whole Foreign Terrorist Act, that it invalidates that order. And so if they can win on the grounds, it goes basically that removal, if it turns out you can. So if it could say, actually, we rule he was foreign enemies, you can't grant this. Suddenly it's no longer applicable. The whole, like, oh, well, I have a stay. Not applicable if you're underneath the Foreign Enemies Act. And so my guess is they're trying to drag their feet in hopes to find another reason to keep him there. Also, because they're saying that he's a gang member, that they want to sell the idea of saying, like, the liberals are trying to get us to bring back dangerous, violent gang members to the United States. And we're fighting against them. That would be my overall thought on it. But also, I think they're retarded, because I think that, but ultimately, what I suspect will happen is they're going to have to report what steps they've taken to try and to facilitate his release, and to say, what have you done? And if they try and go, well, I'm not telling you anything, then we're going to end up back at the Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court did order that, like, you do have to tell them what you're doing to facilitate it. And then it's a question of saying, have they done enough? Because they are right. You can't order them to effectuate. If El Salvador said, you know what, contract's off, we're not going to, like, you don't have to pay us anymore, but we're keeping him. They're right in saying that we can't, there's nothing we can do about that at that point. Like, he's an El Salvadorian citizen in El Salvador, and we don't have jurisdiction to pull him back. And you can't, the court can't like order them to like invade El Salvador. But
Not
because
invade, but he was wrongfully sent there.
I know, but I'm saying that you can't order the executive to like you can't do foreign policy on behalf of them. But because the fact is you can facilitate it, and I believe I would, like, gun to my head, they absolutely have the ability to say, hey, if we could read that contract, I would bet I'd bet anything that just says in the contract, it discusses when they have to respond and retrieve people and send them back to us. The entire purpose of it. They're not being imprisoned for life. This is I think it's currently a 1 year, and they're being held there. So the idea, I don't believe for a fucking second that they left it in going like, who knows what you have to do afterwards. But they won't disclose the contract, which is also a bunch of bullshit. And so again, if the court demands that they show the contract and then they try and do that as well, we're going to end up back in front of the Supreme Court.
And I actually appreciate that explanation, by the way. I was just curious, like, your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Right now, where it stands for me personally, just because he wasn't supposed to be sent there, and there was fears of him being, honestly, let's be honest, killed.
Yep.
I personally do think he's dead, and that's just like where I'm at right now, because we haven't seen him. His family hasn't been in contact with him. El Salvador is also dragging their feet on sending him back. That's where I'm at. I mean, I would love to be proven wrong, and this guy's okay, and they're eventually going to bring him back to U.S. soil. Even if they don't, just something that shows us that, like, hey, he is still alive. Like, he's still here.
They may not bring him back to the U.S. They might bring him, just put him somewhere else.
But if we could just get something that says, okay, you know what? He's still around, breathing, kicking. But the fact that nobody's been able to contact him, there's issues with the El Salvadorian government regarding this case. I'm just nervous for future issues. What if it's like, and I think this is more specific, where it's like, oh, was he a gang member? Was he not? My issue is, could this drip off into people who haven't had any criminal backgrounds at all?
So,
right?
Anyone who was subject to deportation, it would apply to.
Here's the kind of like the worry I have. I don't know, like, if I had heard someone say this kind of order of events to me a year ago, I would have laughed in their face. But if I heard someone say that today, I'd be like, I would take that a little more seriously than I did a year ago. One of the reasons that they're able to do this with minimal due process, even for when they don't fuck up and send them accidentally, right, to the place they were specifically not to, is because they have designated MS-13 as a terrorist organization, and they have
Foreign Enemies Act?
Yeah, the Foreign Enemies Act from 1798. They have ginned that up. My worry is that this is just kind of the beginning, and that after this, they're going to say, well, you know what? Who else is terrorist organizations? These citizen groups that we don't like, right? And they'll start with the criminal types, right? And again, Trump's talking about doing this. And then they're going to use the same logic. These guys are violent, threats to the community. We don't have time for the due process. We don't have time to deal with them right now. Let's just skip the due process part and send them away to the foreign place. And that's real scary to me. And I don't think it's as like, again, if someone had said this, they were going to do this a year ago, I would have laughed in their face. I wouldn't laugh now.
I guess I'd be more of saying the world's a darker place than I think you realized before this. That because again, this is absolutely what you said. Where it goes, find me the man and I'll find you the crime. Yeah. The thing is, what you're trying to do is dig up any law. Goes, okay, here's what I want to do. Find me something that would allow me to do it. And the thing is that this happens more often than you think, and that it's just a matter of saying, if you like it, you probably go, well, I think they drummed up a good one. I think that's fine. And if you don't like it, then you go, oh my God, I can't believe they drummed up some ancient thing that shouldn't be applied here. And that, I mean, I've like that. So this isn't something that like is in my experience. I've experienced it kind of myself, and I've seen it multiple times. So it's not something that's that rare of a thing like that, where you say that it feels like people are basically doing witch hunts. Witch hunts find witches. You know, they find something. The whole thing with Hunter Biden was like, you're telling me he lied on a piece of paper and you got that after a book. And so he owned something, an unloaded gun for 11 days. And he forgot to write down that he did a line of coke off a stripper's ass 6 months ago. And you want him in federal prison
things
for that.
Like that sometimes. But,
and you're like, why? Because the reality is that there's laws. So the law allows you to do things especially if no one does anything. Like, here's one that I try and tell people. Whick, you could be charged and convicted without any issues right now of attempted murder, just for streaming on Twitch. And the way they would do it by saying, it isn't lethal for you to stream on Twitch. However, I think you think it's lethal. And therefore, you attempted murder, and I can charge you. And if people believe it and don't like you, they could convict you on this. The case that actually happened on was like baking soda. The guy thought, and it was real, the guy thought baking soda was toxic to humans, so he tried to poison and kill someone with baking soda, and it was still got hit with attempted murder, even though it couldn't kill anyone, because he was trying. So that the law, if everyone just looks the other way, the law can be perverted. But we generally try, like, it's why the good argument of saying, like,
I think it's being seriously perverted in America. Like, as a Canadian, I don't know if you guys have seen this, travel is down quite a bit. Like, we have things here that are telling us to avoid travel to the US because they're really nervous about Americans, specifically locking up Canadians, once again, without due process, or someone just goes to visit, and they get arrested by ICE because they think they're trying to sneak into the country. And there was a case of a woman in Vancouver who went missing for 2 weeks. She was in America. She went to, it was an embassy near California, because she had a work visa, and she needed to get it, I think, like redone or something. But she had always worked back and forth between Canada and the U.S. The ICE took her for 2 weeks, and she took her to different locations across America. Eventually, her family, they got lawyers. They were able to figure out with ICE. She was sent back to Canada, and she literally said she would never step foot back in that country, even though she had been doing business with them for so many years. And the concern now is that this is actually going to happen to Canadians, for example, and we aren't going to get a day in the court system.
They're
and
doing
now,
this. They're doing.
My Canadian
go
sent
ahead.
to another country. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, they're doing this to foreign visa holders right now. They are finding any kind of traffic violation, any kind of minor misdemeanor jaywalking or something, right? And I'm not kidding. They're revoking their visas and deporting them for that. So we're talking about people who are in college, who are learning, physics or any sort of thing. Yep. They are targeting them because they want them out. So you are absolutely correct that foreign tourism is plummeting. A lot of countries in Europe, Canada, all over the world are saying, don't go to the U.S. You are in danger here.
Well,
and they are.
You'd be deported. He goes, if you go there, you'd be in danger of being sent back, basically.
No, it's not. That's not just a fear. It's a being in prison. She was locked up for 2 weeks. She said she was sleeping on like cold floors. She didn't know where she was. She couldn't contact her family. Her family had to fight with lawyers and able to figure out where their daughter was. And like there was another couple who were pulled over. They were doing a travel through America, and they were pulled over, detained by ICE. And they had all the proper documentation. And so, yeah, of course I wouldn't step foot in that country because now I'm at risk of what? Being locked up in a prison for charges that they can just throw at me because they're bored. And they can just make assumptions and maybe say I'm a gang member just because they want to. Like, these are the concerns that I think a lot of people are having in other countries. And I think America, we're the outside looking in, we're quite literally watching America fall as a country. And it's absolutely incredible to see.
I guess my view, it's more of just like there's people that are under a delusion of how things used to be. Because you're aware of it now, which is, I think, it's still good. But the idea that goes, this wasn't the way it was before, is because it just wasn't on your news.
It wasn't this bad. No, it wasn't to this extent. I'm sorry, Canadians. Let's be honest. If you look at how much Canadian tourism is down, Canadians were touring America for a reason. If you look now, it's down like 59% or something. So if they had the same fears that they did 20 years ago, tourism wouldn't be so high. Now that they're starting to see, oh, you guys are moving towards an authoritarian, a fascist country, of course. That's why it's going down now. So we can see what's happening. It's why we're getting warnings from our own government who are saying, yeah, you probably shouldn't travel there. You need to be very, very careful.
So I'm posting links into chat to a Guardian article showing that nearly 40 students report canceled visas over minor infractions as Trump intensifies crackdown on universities. This report was made... I'm looking for the date. April 7th. Okay. And it's been ramping up. They're just they're just finding whatever they can, any kind of traffic ticket, anything like that. They're finding any kind of violation that you've done, any run-in with the law that is documented, and they're using it as an excuse to just revoke your visa and then get you out of the country.
Yeah, I don't know how common. The thing is, I need to know how often, because often visas were revoked prior to say, is there? I suspect it is. I suspect, again, I believe that absolutely that they are finding excuses. They're trying to deport people.
Yeah, and again,
far
like,
more than before. So
I'm
they're
sure
attempting
that
to do
before
more.
Trump, you can find instances of student visas being revoked. But I would challenge you to find the amount, the rate, and the intensity, and the minor violations that are happening under Trump. I think it's...
Yeah, I'd make that bet. I would bet that you're right. It's not a matter. It's just a matter of saying that I like it. It's more just that saying like I would predict it. The idea of saying like, oh, do I know how often it happened before? And the answer is I have no fucking clue. That if honestly, let's say we looked into it, it turns out it's the exact same number as it was before. You'd go like, oh, I'd be going like I'd be going, oh, that's surprising, but I guess not really doing anything different. We're just hearing about it more often now.
One thing I'm thankful on Trump for, honestly, is how he's made other countries come together, more trade deals for us with the UK, Australia, New Zealand, things like that. Bring back the fuck, what are they gonna call it? Oh, the big monarch. I mean, at the end of the day, Canada's part of the monarch, right? I think that we're strengthening ties with other countries, and I do thank him for that because we've now realized we need to be more self-sufficient. And I do thank Donald Trump for that because for a long time we did rely heavily and still do in a lot of ways on America. But I think we're starting to move away from that. And he's brought kind of Canadian patriotism back, where it's like people are starting to say, okay, enough is enough. I don't know if you saw this, Whick. There's this thing called Buy Canada now. So when you go to a grocery store,
I don't know anything about
what's
this.
Canadian has Canadian flags on it. Yeah, it has Canadian flags on it now. So like if I'm shopping for meat, I go, oh, this has a Canadian flag. I strictly only buy Canadian now. I try to avoid buying American products. And I think that impact is important for these countries to do better. And I think eventually Americans will start to see like how it's going to affect them in the long run. I mean, look at the issues with China.
Done either way.
I think, I think this is damage that's going to take generations, if you can, to fix it. So hey, if you're
so if you're third position or if you're far left, my guess is like, I mean, if you want like bad things to happen.
No, the far left is glorying in this in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah,
they're like, hell yes. They love tariffs, for example. They're like, tariffs? Okay, we like tariffs.
Yeah,
Isolationism?
Harm yourself?
Okay, we can do this. Well, it's not about harming themselves.
They want the collapse of American hegemony, and apparently we'll do it to ourselves.
Accelerationism, like this is like the leftist wet dream in a lot of cases. They are loving it. They're like, okay, the revolution is going to come any day now. But as someone who's much more moderate person, and no offense to you, Mooncake, but I do want you guys to rely on us. I do want strong ties with other nations. I do want to be a hegemony because I think that makes us safer. It makes us wealthier. And I think it gives us far more influence, which allows us to project our power throughout the world. And I think that makes me, and this is a very selfish take perhaps, but that makes me just in a much higher position than other people in other countries, and I like that. I want that privilege. I love being the world currency, right? But the dollar's dropping off a cliff. At least the last I checked, we got bonds, 10-year bonds, just spiking, things like that. Just today, or was it yesterday? One of the two. Powell was talking in front of the Economic Forum and was saying how they're expecting inflation coming up to kind of spike. It's low now, but that's before the tariffs, right? The March inflation numbers came before the tariffs got put in. And Powell was saying how, well, with the tariffs coming in, we're going to see a big slowdown in job growth and productivity. We're also going to see a spike in inflation. At least that's their prediction. And I don't like it. I don't want it. I want to be wrong on this, but I don't think I am. I think that this administration, whether they're trying to on purpose or not, is making us less... they're isolating us. They're isolating us from the world, and I don't like it. It's
hilarious to watch. Like, basically, there's people that can poke quotes from, like, Reagan. So Republicans used to, like, Reagan was the great, like, how much they worship Reagan. And you can find him, like, countering, the exact opposite position of everything Trump says, or even, like, Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell, like, conservative thinkers that have been like, oh, these sort of, and all of them are against everything Trump says. And you can find, like, speeches of them going free trade, no tariffs, go anti everything Trump is doing. And it's like, how is it? I thought, like, I could have sworn it's supposed to be against all this stuff. Why are we suddenly changing our minds?
I don't know, man.
I don't know. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's I feel like they're just finding any excuse to go like, well, like again, they're post-talking. They're going, it must be good. The libs don't like it, therefore, only find a reason to think it's okay.
We're watching the downfall of America in real time. It's actually it's a sight to behold.
Sad. But,
I mean, the idea
arguably,
we're pretty strong. Like downfall's a little much. Okay, downfall's a little much.
Genuinely,
but the weakening of America. Okay, I'll give you that. Okay.
I think downfall is actually the appropriate word for this. Like when, and once again, it's like you have to be on like the outsider watching it happen. It is quite literally the downfall of America. But I think, unfortunately, this is actually what a lot of Americans wanted, and that's so unfortunate to say. But I think, okay, maybe this is my more controversial take. Okay, I think people didn't forgive Obama having 2 terms. I'm gonna say it. I think a lot of Republicans or a lot of people on the right didn't forgive people for voting in Obama twice. That's a little personal thing. That's a
I would point. I think there's something to what you're saying, but what I would point at, I would point the finger at is the 2008 bank bailouts. I think that a lot of our current political climate is based on how the government at the time handled that, and the 2020 lockdowns. Those 2 things. Those 2 things.
Those downfalls ended up making a ton of money for a lot of people.
In regard to, sorry, the lockdown. What do you mean specifically? I'm curious now. Sorry.
So, I've talked to a lot of conservative people, Trump voters, and their kind of reason to tear is they hated the lockdowns. They thought it was government overreach, and they felt like it was a violation of their rights for all sorts of reasons.
But they're dipshits who don't realize it wasn't the federal government that was controlling that. It was states.
I get it. I understand, right? But they don't, and they think it was again. They don't forgive, and they will do anything to have that never happen again. But the irony, the dark irony, is that what Trump is doing right now, the tools that he is forging, the lines that he is crossing, make the backlash is going to be worse. So I'll tell the right who's listening tonight the same thing I told the left 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a year ago. Hey, what you're doing, because the left, look, I am no fan of the censorship under Biden and things like that. I think that what a lot of the universities and things did was a big overstep. A lot of the culture of the left in America that fired people for their opinions, for their tweets, canceled people. That was horrific. That was bad. That was really, really bad.
Yeah.
I think that set the stage for this kind of like rebellion against that. And I warned them at the time, hey, if you continue down this road, it's going to be turned against you. It's going to hurt you. This is a double-edged sword. The things that you are wearing the boot now, but you will not always wear the boot. And they're going to take their revenge on you for this. Do not do this. They didn't listen to me, unfortunately.
Revenge.
They don't.
It just says any blade you wield will be wielded back against you.
Yes. They didn't listen to me. Maybe the right will, because I'm telling you, what you're doing now, saying, hey, there's a group of people that we can decide don't deserve First Amendment rights. Do you really want to make that the precedent? Like, this certain specific group of people can't say these things. I don't think you do, because I think you can imagine how that will be used against you. And if you think it was bad before, oh, baby, you ain't seen nothing yet.
We already know because it's happened before where the whole, like, everyone's pro free speech when they're the ones on underfoot, and everyone suddenly is saying freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom of consequences when they're the ones in control. It's like,
it's going to be, but it's going to be worse. It's like, this is my thing. It's ratcheting up every single time. And and when it inevitably happens and the left is back in power, I will warn them the same thing. Stop, because what you do now is going to be returned on you. And it's going to ramp up, and everyone's going to go harder and harder and harder. And I feel like we're in this like death spiral of revenge that is going on right now, and it's not good.
There's more moderates needed, basically, is what you're trying to say as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And also just chewing out of current politics, and you probably feel a lot better as well.
Yeah, the left messed up there, but unfortunately, I think, and I'm not going to say every person on the right, because there are some that I think are willing to. Like, they're willing to change their opinion based on information they receive. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of it is a cult. It's a very cultish mentality. And I think it's really hard to get through to that. And now that people treat politics like a sports team, everyone wants to, quote unquote, win. There has to be like someone who's winning. And I think it's really hard to get through to people who just want to win consistently instead of actually maybe looking more into the information or to the facts or to different cases. And so we'll have to just see, I guess, what happens from there. But I don't know how far this goes. Like I said, I compared it to 1938 Germany, and I think at this rate, and people can call me dramatic. You can say I'm being a little dramatic. I think that's where America's headed.
Yeah, I think we're fine. But if in
We'll
terms
see.
of like, it is an opportunity, I think. So if you have it, there's ways to make money off like the fact that like when things collapsed. This thing is 2008 was a time to make a lot of money.
I don't want
COVID
that
was
to
a
be
time to
the
lock in a lot of
message
money.
people
So
take
is
from
this.
tonight. Is like, hey, America's collapsing, but you can make bank, baby. I don't want that to be the. I don't want to be that to be the message here. But fair
I'm saying
enough.
it's not that it's a collapse. I'm saying it's a downturn that goes that where you make your most money is in recession. So that 2008 was an opportunity for people to get in and for the market to go back up. COVID, the interest rates, people refinance their houses at crazy low interest rates. And that there's just saying that you can make money off of people suffering. Just saying, like, I would say don't doom spiral. There are still, even in a situation like this, there's opportunities.
What you're saying is that I should make money off the suffering of Americans. That is a great idea, actually.
Absolutely.
That is a great idea.
Yes.
I like this guy.
Absolutely. If you have the free cash, you should be this entire downturn thing, because these tariffs aren't, again, unless you think the world, again, if you really think it's over, then yeah, I guess it's all over. But if you're going, no, this isn't the end, things are this massive downturn. This is a dip for you to buy and suddenly like triple, like 7x your money. Like I had siblings who bought houses off of the recession.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen. Mooncake, when are we going to get you on for another panel?
It depends, Wick. Honestly, it's like I'm good sometimes, but like sometimes they're crazy. Sometimes the panels is just like people roasting each other for like an hour, and it's such a nightmare. But like, I would like to do another panel. What do you have coming up? Do you have any like?
Well, I don't. Look, this week's pretty full, but next week I'm still thinking of things that, things to talk about, right? So if you have something that you really want to drill down on, like, here's a good one. Do you want to talk about whether or not America's done? America's downfall?
Oh, yeah.
I'd be down. Debate that with some people. Yeah. I can set that up, and we can make a panel out of that. What are you doing Wednesday next week?
Wednesday next. Yeah. Nothing actually.
Then let's set it up. 6 p.m. Eastern. The downfall of America. Is that hyperbolic, or is Canada going to be our new overlords soon? We're gonna find out. Okay, gang. I love you all. We're gonna end for tonight. I'll send these lovely people off. Bye-bye. Wasn't that fun? Wasn't that grand? I hope you all had a great show. Thank you for the subs on Twitch. Did we not get any super chats today? Wow, nothing on YouTube. YouTube, I'm usually making bank. YouTube, I usually make like $100. You guys just taking a break from donating today? That's fine. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're gonna have Pisco. Okay, we're gonna have Aircraft Sparky. We're gonna have New York Shade. And we're gonna have Prime Kai. And gang, we're going to be discussing Trump's deportations. It's going to be a debate. It'll be fun. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. Pisco, oh God. No, not oh God. Oh Whick. And then Friday, I'm going to be going on a Gibbs panel to debate on the economy. So that will be fun. Tune in tomorrow. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.